Good morning, everybody. Our Beatles documentary review series continues this morning with our look at Paul McCartney's Wingspan, an Intimate History. This is a 2001 documentary on the history of Paul McCartney's band Wings, hosted, and the interviews are conducted by Paul's daughter Mary McCartney, I believe. Um, and this documentary starts just after the breakup of the Beatles. As a matter of fact, Paul talks about um, how depressed he was uh, just after the breakup, and how it was Linda that kind of pressed him back into service, as it were, and got him um, to record again because he was dispirited after the Beatles breakup. Uh, and it was through her help and encouragement that he recorded Ram, which could be considered the first Wings record, although it wasn't. Um, um, it was basically recorded by a trio which consisted of Paul, Linda, and drummer Denny Sywell, I believe. And the majority of it was recorded, I think, on Paul and Linda's farm after Paul's son and daughters went to bed. And and then, of course, we learn about the recording of Band on the Run, or Wildlife, which was the first Wings record, and then the way this documentary is laid out, they go year by year, starting from 1970 to 1979, or 1980, which was basically the end of Wings. Because actually Wings ended after Paul was busted for drug possession in Japan, because Wings was due to start a Japanese tour, and as a result of this drug bust, Paul was detained and imprisoned in Japan for a period of time, which helped to further disintegrate Wings. And but they, like I said, it starts in 1971, I think. It starts with the early days of Wings. See, Linda was not a trained musician. Actually, Paul had to convince her to join the band, because she was not a trained keyboard player, although she became a great keyboard player. And there were detractors among Paul's fans that said, "What is Linda doing in the band?" And they didn't understand why she was in the band. And so, in order to break in the band, they went on a tour of colleges and small halls, and they would basically pull up to a town and ask the college if they could play in places like their student union or places like that, and they, more often than not, they would get gigs that way, and they would take their kids along with them, and so, but so it basically just tells them, it tells the story of Wings, and of course my favorite years of Wings were 1976, the Venus and Mars time, and this was this documentary was done a couple years before Rock Show came out, so this was my first glimpse of my favorite Paul McCartney and Wings concert film, Rock Show, which we discussed a long time ago. And but so and they actually tell the story of the making of Band on the Run, which basically was another trio record, Denny Lane, Paul, and Linda, because the other two members of Wings refused to go into Lagos, which is in Africa, which is where they recorded Band on the Run. So basically, Linda, Paul, and Denny Lane went to Lagos, and the other two stayed behind. And when they got to Lagos, the supposed recording studio was severely below par. I mean, they had to scramble to get equipment, and when they did, it was substandard. And actually, the power for the studio was basically two wires that some guy stuck together. And in but I believe they didn't hit their they hit their stride after the release of Venus and Mars, and even during the Venus and Mars tour, they had their problems with band members, because Jimmy McCulloch, the guitar player, refused to play the encore one night after the show, and he quit. And but anyway, but like I said, by 1980, the band was pretty much disintegrated, and then, of course, we know in 1989, Paul and Linda came back with a vengeance, and recorded Flowers in the Dirt, which we will be discussing when we discuss the concept from Get Back. And of course, we all know what happened in 1980, so that was pretty much another reason I think Wings ended, was because of what happened in December of 1980. And so I think this documentary first aired on was first released on TV, and it is a really well done documentary, and it really tells the story of Wings quite well. There was actually a couple companion releases to this documentary, which was essentially Wings compilations of hits, and Wings Wings compilations of songs like Wings compilations of songs that were featured in the documentary, and some others, and they're called Wings of History and what have you. So there are a couple companion compilations that were released in conjunction with the documentary. And like I said, it's really well done, and you will highly enjoy it if you're a Wings fan. And I give it about 5 stars.